Welcome back. Some of you, it is really an honor to be here with you tonight to help celebrate something very special in the life of our institution. I want to begin by warmly welcoming all the inductees that are here, all the families that are here helping us celebrate, the student athletes, the coaches, the alumni, the donors, the future donors, the community partners, the future partners, pretty much just everybody who's here. Thank you for being here. I want to recognize some of our governing board. I think it's on two. We have Trustee Libby Downey is here. Thank you for being here. Trustee Charlie in the back. We have members of our foundation board, our faculty, of our staff, and of course some of our students are here as well. Special thank you to the Pappas and the Phillips, all the families that are here as well, and their representatives. This is a truly great event, and your legacy has helped shape who we are and where we are today. So, today is significant for two reasons. First, we are honoring the extraordinary individuals throughout this whole global Hall of Fame. So you'll see that unveiling as we out there on the wall. They represent what is the very best of NPC athletes, the very best of what it means to be a logo. And secondly, we're celebrating I was going to say like the unveiling, the dedication, but the state has been here for a while, so they kind of re-upping and naming of our Pappas Community Stadium, which is a special space, not only for our athletes, but for the entire community. This day is about honoring legacy, while also inspiring the future. The Logo Hall of Fame exists to recognize individuals who embody the true Logo spirit. These are people who have worked hard to achieve excellence and remain also connected to the greater community themselves by giving back, by leading, and by serving their community. Our Hall of Famers remind us of what is possible when talent meets opportunity. Their achievements are not just about their wins and their records, they're about perseverance, it's about teamwork, and it's also about character. And their stories matter because they continue, those Hall of Famers, to inspire our current and our future students on the field, in the classroom, in the community as well. They show us, they show our students that greatness can begin here at NBC and continue to support our community. At the same time, we're also very proud of the community stadium that we have out here, a place that represents much more than just a field and bleachers. It reflects commitment to students, to success, and to their well-being. It reflects pride in our athletics programs, in our young people that wear these jerseys and these uniforms. Most importantly, it reflects our belief that this campus should be and is and will continue to be a welcoming place for the broader and greater community to gather, to cheer, and to just have fun and do all. It is intentionally called Community Stadium because that is exactly what it is. A space for students, families, alumni, and even our neighbors, even the neighbors that don't like us all the time with the sound, we want to embrace them as well. They are a part of our community, and when we have issues and concerns about sound and lighting, in my mind, I'm like, yes, but we are an active community, and we are here. It stands for a symbol of partnership, generosity, and deep roots with our athletics that is shaping the identity of NPC. Family, and here, thank you. Your impact of this college in our students, in our community is and will continue to be long-lasting. Your legacy is written not just in championships or traditions, or in the lives changed the path open, but it will literally be written on the wall. And NBC athletics is more than just about competition. It's about teamwork. It's about discipline. It's about belonging. And they are about creating paths to education. education and opportunity for all of our students. Both today's honorees in our Disney Stadium and reinforce our broader mission as a college, open doors, change lives, strengthen our community, and we celebrate today is not only just what we've accomplished now, but what we hope to keep doing in the future. So I hope you are proud of this space, as I am. Thank you for being here. Thank you for honoring this moment. And I will now turn it back over to Dean Bates.
Rich Kazari to give us some history of our local Hall of Fame.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak today. I was reading an essay recently about this English teacher, and whenever they asked him about his job, he said, I teach a course in magic. I teach my students that words and literature and everything about the English course I teach is magic. And I always felt the same way about the local Hall of Fame. It's been magical in its impact, in its legacy, and in the course it has taken. And in fact, I have a lesson, an insight at the end that I want to share from the story here. The Hall of Fame began just, recognizing outstanding athletes. With a twist, the athletes had to give back to their communities in one way or another. And, like Ron Johnson, an NFL player, and he's president of the Boys and Girls Club of Maui County. And I could go on and on. Mary Dan Albert, who was outstanding quarterback on our first championship team, and he's the longest serving man in all of Monterey history. And I could just go right down the line as I look at people here, but Becky told me you have 3 minutes, not 3 hours. So we started off with recognizing outstanding athletes with public service as part of the criteria for their selection. And then the Hall of Fame took a magical turn. We decided to include distinguished alumni. Greatness in their professions, again with public service in mind, like Mary Claypool, who received an outstanding award for contributions at the U.S. Secretary of as U.S. Department of Commerce, like Joseph Farrell, who's the first Japanese American to head the highway patrol in their then 81-year history, and on and on. Like I said, I need 6 hours there for this kind of thing. The next bit of magic came when Dr. Walter Trump was president. And he and Becky came together and they decided, let's make this part of NPC governance. And that took it up another. After they took over, before this, previously, we were just a committee of coaches, teachers, staff, who had a deep understanding of the history of NPC. And it was getting tough to make ends meet financially. Well, Dr. Trively and Becky took care of that, and they, put their presentation, the polish, the performance, took it to another level. And now, look at what we have. We have global legends. We have recognition of an outstanding alumnus or alumna. We have the outstanding athletes, a distinguished person who's been a retiree of NPC and a rising star. And somebody's become recognition that way. It's a major fundraising and fundraising event. So what's the insight? What's the lesson from this story? Every bit of good in our world has an impact and a legacy if perseverance and dedication and hard work is a part of it. Posterity is dependent on unhistoric acts and programs like Hall of Fame, like religions event. There's a momentum that builds, an energy that surges, a wave that swells. If guided, that has consequences far beyond the initial intention. And our little college and its graduates have touched the lives of millions now, when you think about it. Bringing these wonderful people back to be recognized encourages them to keep doing what they're doing, and it encourages us to even do more. In these difficult times, in our country and abroad, these little ripples of hope in colleges, in nonprofit organizations, in charitable organizations can change the course of history. with the result that our lives are vastly different from our mothers and fathers' lives, as their lives were vastly different than their mothers and fathers. It's magic.
It's an honor to follow those two gentlemen. I have some prepared remarks, but before I do, I want to recognize someone in this room. Alex Holiday. Are you still here, Alex? Alex is the NBC manager and one of the best reporters the Monterey Herald has. And it was an honor to work with Alex for all those years. When I arrived at the Herald in February of 1972, my first full-time newspaper job, I wondered who I would encounter in covering sports at NBC. I was excited, enthusiastic, and not a little bit nervous. I've been a sports editor of the Daily Cal at UC Berkeley during my senior year, but now I wouldn't be writing for fellow students, I'd be writing for a general community. I'd already learned that coaches' demeanors encompass a wide spectrum. Some dislike reporters, particularly after they lose the game. Others would simply not want to be bothered. And then I had the great and good fortune to meet Chris Pappas and Luke Phillips, who combined for over a century of coaching and teaching at this school. They were the cornerstones of NBC sports, and the football stadium was fittingly named after them. And if the late Larry Cummins, who was the men's basketball coach and baseball coach for many years, had also coached football, we probably have 3 names on that stadium. Luke grew up locally, was the co-captain of the football team at NBC and part of the first graduating class. He then went to play under the legendary Pappy Waldorf at Cal, and he played in 2 Rose Bowls. Decades later, he still attended Cal home games, walking up the hill on the campus, accompanied by good friend Rich Montori, who worked for the school for 30 years, many of them as the public information officer. Luke came to NBC in 1957. Chris arrived in 1963 as an assistant football coach, and neither of them ever went anywhere else. That showed their love for this school and the love for this community. They were 2 guys in their 20s when they met more than 60 years ago as assistant coaches at San Jose State, a breeding ground for future NFL coaching greats such as Bill Walsh and Dick Vermeil, and a lifetime bond ensued between Chris and Luke. Luke primarily coached football here, but over the years also coached golf, tennis, and track and field. Cal coached football. Chris coached football and baseball and also was the school's athletic director for 28 years. He helped institute women's athletic programs at NBC before Title IX passed. Title IX established fairness for female athletes, which was definitely lacking. And Chris also helped create the school's adaptive physical education program, working with students who had physical disabilities, either from birth or through accidents. Luke was known as a great motivator and was the first coach to be inducted into the California Community College Hall of Fame for both football and golf. Perhaps the first time I met Luke was at the Herald, then at the corner of Pacific and Jefferson Streets, when I was told the golf coach had dropped by to drop off results. In walked Luke Phillips, who I knew was the football coach, but the golf coach? Let me tell you, the head football coach at Cal did not also coach golf. In covering the football games, I decided the best place would be at the local sideline, where I could catch the likes of Ron Johnson catching passes, and I walked up and down the field, keeping stats, and standing behind the coaches. It was immediately clear Luke was high-strung. Chris was calmer, but equally involved in the play-by-play of the field, and both were fully committed to the players and trying to win. Commitments. Chris and his wife Peggy were married 69 years. Now that's a commitment. Victoria Phillips, who was married to Luke for 43 years, said Luke and Chris had a very close relationship. They were like brothers. They were loyal to each other always. They coached differently. Luke was intense, especially in earlier years. He mellowed a little with age. Chris was serious in another way. They had a lot of respect for each other, and I never heard Luke say an unkind word about Chris. Chris Pappas, one of the 4 sons of Chris and Peggy, said they had a great friendship that lasted for over 60 years. Chris keeps the family's original Greek name, Pappas. That's why he's not Chris Pappas. But we knew him as Chris Pappas for a while. He said his father and Luke were complete opposites. Luke was the joker and Chris the straight man. But from a sports writer's perspective, what they both were unsparing in their time with me, approachable, and easily quotable. And they were both gentlemen. They were likable. It was easy to establish a rapport with both of them. The move to name this stadium after the two gentlemen was spearheaded by Chris Pappas with the help of several others. I can't mention them all, but we included Sam Phillips, one of Luke's grandsons, and Victoria Phillips, his wife. Chris Pappas said it was the perfect way to honor the two men together. And Chris had played quarterback under his father and under Luke for 2 seasons, and 2 younger brothers, Bobby and Richard, also played for both. Herman Edwards, who played here and then coached college and is an NFL commentator, was a huge fan of these two gentlemen. And he said of Chris, he's a man of great integrity and character that you could trust. He was a provider of hope for all the guys who ever played for him. And the same could be said about Luke. After 22 years as an assistant football coach here at NBC, Pappas succeeded his friend and co-worker Luke in 1985, and he served as the head coach until 1996, and later became an assistant to Mike Rasmussen. Chris was still working with the Louisville special teams in 2019 at the age of 88. Ron Johnson, who has graced us with his presence today, said of the two men, both were super fair-minded in terms of following the rules of the game and teaching that way. They'd say, we're going to play it fair, and if the other teams aren't playing fair, that's their problem, not ours. And Ron had a great career with the Philadelphia Eagles, and as mentioned earlier, he runs the Boys and Girls Clubs in Monterey County. He also recalled how these two guys, and this wasn't publicized, went out of their way to find housing for the players who came here and were not local. And sometimes they even lived with Ron and Lynn Johnson and their family. Rich Montori said, it is the impact they had as teachers and mentors, teaching values on the playing fields and in the classroom, teaching the valued lessons of life that are remembered by thousands of players and students who have crossed their paths. Victoria Phillips said, Luke cared deeply for his student athletes and found ways to connect with them and their parents alike. Luke thought he was living his best life. He loved coaching and he loved teaching. You know, football's intense. If you watch any of the college football playoff games or any of the NFL playoffs, you can see that. But it also has its moments of lightness. One time, Lyndon Schutzler, NBC's former athletic director, recalled, Pappas was on the sidelines and Luke was communicating from the booth because he was very excitable during the games. And in one tight game, Luke is yelling at Chris, put in Tony Lagana, a fine linebacker. Chris told him he couldn't. Luke asked, why not? In colorful words. Chris responded, because he graduated 2 years ago. Luke passed away in February 2019 at age 91, Chris the following year at 89. Long after I left journalism and moved back to the Monterey Peninsula, I served for 6 years on the school's foundation board, which is so brilliantly run by Becky Michael, and it helps raise money for students. And I also spent several years on the Student Booster Committee, and I witnessed the foundation that Chris and Luke had established and was maintained by future athletic directors such as Lyndon Schutzler and Wendy Beats. As the years and decades went by and the sports seasons came and went, Chris and Luke remained fixtures here. Chris Pappas said on several occasions, both Bill Walsh and Dick Vermeil, who won 4 Super Bowls between them, told me they envied my dad for staying in one home and going to that home every night. Said Schutzler, they loved what they did and they were loved in return. There were offers for both Chris and Luke to coach elsewhere at higher levels, but neither ever budged. The thousands of students and players whom Chris and Luke taught and coached were all the more fortunate for that, and so are we.
We got a chance to thank the school and the board of trustees and everything a few years back when the stadium was named. I have a couple of thank yous I'd like to make. In the last 8 months when I went to see Becky Michael about looking at this area out here, I had also included a plan that included the Hall of Fame. concept, and she enjoyed it. So, Becky, thank you very much for your help. And the other couple I'd like to congratulate and thank is Richard and Renee Kazarian. I remember when Richard started this Hall of Fame, as passionate as he can be about anything, quite frankly. For those of you who had him as an outstanding history teacher, I'm telling you, he was just as good as a football coach. He's a brilliant teacher. And I want to thank Richard and Renee for the time they spent, probably, well, it's been 30 years, I think, since the start. So I appreciate what you've done and very glad to have recognition up at the school. I think it's very important, and I think it will be well received. Thank you very much.
I got it. Okay. Is the family here? They're gonna write and think they're around. Okay. Big unveiling. Drum. Do we have drums? No drums. Okay. There we go.